The topic that we are going to do is alpha particle scattering experiment. Now, first of all, what was the purpose of the experiment? We have to understand the purpose of experiment first of all. Purpose of the experiment was to understand plum pudding model. The purpose was to understand the plum pudding model of an atom or of matter. So plum pudding model of matter. Before understanding plum pudding model, we need to know that discovered facts at the time of the experiment. What were the discovered facts at the time of the experiment? It is important. At the time of experiment, people knew about people knew about there are there are two type there are two types of charges, which are positive charges and negative charges. There are two types of charges. They are positive charges and negative charges. Then we have positive charges are heavier than the negative. Positive charges are heavier than the negative charges. Positive charges are heavier than the negative charges. It was discovered at the time of the experiment. And the plum pudding model was both the positive and the negative, both the positive and the negative charges are distributed. Both the positive and the negative charges are distributed throughout the structure of the matter. Both the positive charges and the negative charges, they are distributed throughout the structure of the matter, This was basically plum pudding model. So according to the plum pudding model of the matter, the positive and the negative charges were distributed throughout the structure of the matter. This model of the matter is called plum pudding model. So this model of the matter is called plum pudding model, in which you have a uniform distribution of positive and negative charges. This model of atom in which you have a uniform distribution of positive and negative charges, this is called plum pudding model. So uniform distribution of positive and negative charges is called plum pudding model. Now according to plum pudding model, so plum pudding model was before the discovery of nucleus basically. According to plum pudding model, the positive charge was not concentrated at a single point, but it was scattered throughout the structure of the matter. So basically, according to plum pudding model, the positive charge was scattered throughout the structure of the matter. So the purpose of this experiment was, the purpose of the experiment was, the purpose, कैटू के पास लेके हूँ डेढ़ एक क्लास पढ़ा रहे ओके डेढ़ एक क्लास पढ़ा रहे फिर आपको ले जाएगा ओके the purpose of excuse me, it was my daughter. The purpose of the scattered, the purpose of the experiment, this experiment, the experiment alpha particle scattering experiment, the purpose of the alpha particle scattering experiment was to test whether, the purpose of the alpha particle scattering experiment was to test whether the positive charge was concentrated whether the positive charge was concentrated at a single point in the matter or it is scattered throughout. So this was the purpose of the experiment. Now, what was the plan? What was the selection of apparatus? Selection of apparatus. First of all, why to select a thin leaf of why to select a thin leaf of gold? What was the purpose of selecting a thin leaf of gold? The purpose of selecting a thin leaf of gold was the most malleable and ductile metal available. They were able to achieve the thinnest possible sheet of any material that was sheet of gold. So the thinnest possible sheet that they have available at the time of the experiment was a sheet of gold. So the sheet of gold was the thinnest material that they can have. So basically what they were doing was, if they used results with gold leaf and results with a thin sheet of some other material. So if we compare the results with gold leaf and the results with some other sheet of thin materials, then we can compare them. Let's suppose for a sheet of gold, and for a sheet of if we have a sheet of gold if we have a sheet of gold, then there are two possibilities. Either the positive charge could be scattered positive charge, or the other possibility was the positive charge could be concentrated. So there are two possibilities. The positive charge could be scattered or the positive charge could be concentrated at single point. What would be the result? This sheet will give a result in which from here the alpha particle will pass straight. From here the alpha particle will have small deviation because alpha particle is a positively charged particle and it will deflect from here. And if you project it here, it will be returned backward. And if you pass it through here, it will go just for example straight. A particle passing through this point will go upwards. A particle colliding head on will go backwards. And this particle will go down. So basically, if we have concentrated positive charge with gold leaf, then alpha particles would have deflections. With this, the result would be straight passing. Alpha particle will pass straight. So a scattered charge in a gold leaf will not deflect any alpha particle. However, if we used some other material, then the sheet will not be thin and the results would be even the scattered charges provide some deflection, and that deflection, if it is combined together, now that deflection is combined together now if we combine the results of all the small deflections, the outcome would be like this. So even the scattered charges, deflection with scattered charges, and if just for example your charge was concentrated and you pass alpha particle through here, you'll get the same result. If we use a material that is quite thick, it will give confusing result because we need a thin sheet from which we should write that if बेटा क्या कर रही हो if we क्या कर रही हो भैया बेटा वो नहीं मिलेगा मैं क्लास ले रहा हूँ ना प्लीज आप बहुत देर से खत्म हो गया आप मेरा फोन ले लो if we use a thin sheet of material, then the alpha particles will not deflect from scattered charges, yet they will undergo deflections, through clusters of charges. So if we use a thin sheet of metal, then if the charges are scattered, then no deflection. So if we use a thin sheet of material, then the alpha particles will not deflect from scattered charges, yet they will undergo deflections through clusters of charges. So if we have clusters of charges, then alpha particles will have prominent deflection. They will have enough deflections. So we need to know that, however, if alpha particles are passed through a thick sheet of material, then, however, if alpha particles are passed through a thick sheet of material, then they will undergo deflections. Then they will undergo deflections from both the scattered charges and the clusters of charges. So alpha particle, a fair test will be if we are using a gold leaf that is thin enough to give fair results. The purpose is to check whether the positive charges are in clusters or they are scattered. So this is the main thing. So this experiment was performed to check whether the positive charges exist in clusters or they exist as a scattered model. Now, the point is we need to understand that why not gamma radiations, why not gamma radiations were used in the scattering experiment. What was the purpose of not using gamma radiations in the alpha particle scattering experiment? The problem was gamma radiations will not deflect from both the scattered positive charges and the clusters of positive charges. So gamma radiation will not give any deflection from both the scattered positive charges and the clusters of the positive charges. That's why